Shalom Chavrim, I'm Stephen Ben-Nun. You're watching Israeli News Live, doing a little screen capture news broadcast this evening, friends. I've just been very busy today here during Shabbat coming to an end, but also getting ready too. We have Passover is getting ready to really be underway. I'm going to be talking to you guys a little bit more in depth about that as the week moves forward here coming up. But first, I want to look at some very interesting news, and I want to really thank our good friend, sister Dr. Rosa there. She sent me some very interesting articles that I wanted to share with you. This one here, very much concerning. We've been hearing so much coming out of the Trump administration about wanting to stop abortion and hey, I couldn't agree more. I think it's one of the most devastating things ever to this country that's ever happened in the United States was Roe versus Wade making this a legalized issue for effectively murder. Is what it really comes down to. And I say this, but let me just also say there's a lot of women that have done this that have lived with lifelong scars. And my heart does go out for these women as well, because I realize we make decisions in life and we end up realizing later things we should not have done. And it causes tremendous scars upon them. Also, there are those that have worked in these facilities that come out of them, that they're also scarred for life as a result. And I think, too, about this shooting that happened down in Florida not too long ago. And, of course, there's a lot of issues about that still trouble me because I believe there was a setup behind that. I actually really question whether or not this young man that they accused was even guilty myself. I believe there was a setup. He was a fall guy. But the reason I bring that up over this issue about abortion is because one of the I don't remember if it was a teacher or I know it was the mother, I believe, actually, of one of the kids that died. And I do believe the children actually died in the shooting, but she brought up the challenge. Why doesn't the NRA care as much about the sanctity of life that is promised in the Constitution as much as they do about the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms? And I would have loved to have been the spokesperson for the NRA on that day because I would have clearly blasted this issue over abortion and say, yes, the NRA specifically deals with the right to bear arms, but there are plenty of groups out there that care just as much about the right to life and the sanctity of life as they do, such as in the case of the right to bear arms. So, but my point, though, as I look at this situation here, is that President Trump signs a $1.3 trillion budget bill that still funds Planned Parenthood. Well, I guess it's just a hurdle he hasn't reached, isn't it? Oh, come on, friends. I mean, let's face it. It's politics as usual. Whatever makes the Christian evangelical community happy, the president is willing to say. And I hate to be it this way, friends, but more and more as I watch things go on, it's just politics as usual. And that's what's really sad. But anyway, this article here from LifeSite, Trump signs $1.3 billion budget that still funds Planned Parenthood. President Trump has announced he signed a spending bill, but said he will never sign another bill like this again. The pro-assisted suicide group Compassion of Choice has immediately sent supporters an email celebrating the final bill's exclusion of an amendment to repeal D.C.'s assisted suicide law. The bill that Trump signed does not defend Planned Parenthood. Very troubling indeed. But anyway, let's move on along here. I also got this one in here from American Military News. Russia is arming the Taliban in Afghanistan, according to the U.S. general. Or one U.S. general says this here, and that's very troubling to hear this. It says Russia, this is what actually is said, though. We got to watch the verbiage in here. Russia is arming the Taliban in Afghanistan. The head of U.S. forces in Afghanistan told the BBC in an exclusive interview that General John Nicholson criticized Russia's destabilizing activity and said that Russian weapons were being smuggled across Tajikistan border into the Taliban's hands. We see a narrative that is being used that grossly exaggerates the number of ISIS fighters here. Nicholson told BBC News this narrative then is used as a justification for Russians to legitimize the actions of the Taliban and provide some degree of support to the Taliban. We've had stories written by the Taliban that have appeared in the media about financial support provided by the enemy. We've had weapons brought to this headquarters and given to us by Afghan leaders, and said this was given by the Russians to the Taliban. He added, we know that the Russians are involved. You know what's funny, guys, is what gets me, and I don't condone Russia for what they're doing by no means, but that's exactly what the U.S. is doing in Syria with the jihadists. And not only the jihadists, but guys, do you remember this article over here on Wired, exclusive tracking ISIS weapons supply chain back to the U.S.? That's in Afghanistan. Okay, they show the picture right there. All right, it says here, Habib aluminum, or Habib aluminum, the call echoes through the courtyard of a trash-strewn home in Tal Afar, a remote outpost in northern Iraq. It is late September and still hot, the kind of heart that seems to come from all sides, even a radiate up from the ground, and the city is empty except for feral dogs and young men with guns. Habibi! Dameen Splitters shouts again, using the casual Arabic term and endearment to call out for Haider al-Hakim, his Iraqi translator and partner on the ground. All right. Now it goes on into the article here showing how that the U.S. weapons were being smuggled into the hands of ISIS up in Afghanistan. And then these weapons being used against American soldiers. You know, if you're going to arm terrorist thugs in Syria with overwhelming amount of weapons, you don't think that they're not going to make it in other regions as well? Sure they are. Comes back to haunt the Americans later. And it's sad because Barack Obama did exactly that. Left all the weapons, tanks, and everything, and I guess left the access codes for them in order for these terrorist groups to use them, ISIS that is, to use it against Syria and places in Iraq as well. Business as usual, right? It's what fuels the economy for the deep state. Turkey calls evangelism an act of terrorism, charges American pastor. This is something that should not just be sitting on a back burner somewhere. As much leverage as the United States has with Turkey, why is this pastor, why is Pastor Andrew Brunson, an American pastor, about 50 years old, why is he still sitting locked up in a Turkish jail? I thought this was a NATO country. Until now, he's been held without charge, but last week, Turkish court approved 62-page indictment against him. The charges include membership in an armed terrorist organization and military espionage. And this is all over this whole ordeal of this staged coup that the CIA deep state was behind and helping Erdogan look like a victim so they could end up invading northern Syria. So is this why this poor man is being held a prisoner? And the lady in this interview here says he's a political prisoner. I agree he is. But the U.S. could do a heck of a lot more to get this man freed. Not just President Trump and Vice President Pence. Every time they talk to Erdogan, say, oh, by the way, do you remember Pastor Brunson and everything? Could you maybe release him? We could be a little bit more firm about this issue, and I guarantee you the man would get released. If Turkey loves the guy that supposedly did the masterminded the coup so much in America, do an even swap. Gulen Fagan. Is Gulen Fagan even an American? Probably not. I don't know. Is he Turkish? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. Honestly, friends, I don't know the answer to that. But if you want to do a deal, do a swap then. Because Pastor Brunson is an American citizen who's being held like this. Well, they're probably doing it because they want Gulen Fagan. I don't really know what the issue is, but I know one thing. The Turkish government will imprison anybody that speaks out against them. And if they're calling Christians terrorists, which is kind of weird, you know, why doesn't Pope Francis, I mean, he seems to have a close relationship with Erdogan. Why doesn't he speak up for him? I'm sorry. He's not a Sunni Muslim. Maybe that's the reason why. Very troubling indeed. Very troubling. Reckless Skripal. Russian envoy thanks first responder to reckless Skripal poisoning, assures him Moscow not involved. I think that was a very bold thing to do. The Russian ambassador to the UK has sent a letter to the police officer who was poisoned by the Sergei Skripal incident. He thanked the officer for being the first responder. First responder assured him Moscow wasn't behind the poisoning. Ambassador Alexander Yakovenko told Nikki Bailey that he was relieved to learn that the officer was feeling well enough to be discharged from the hospital and reunited with his loved ones. I wish you a full recovery and hope that you will be able to return to your normal life as soon as possible, the letter reads. And this is the letter that was sent to him. One thing, though, that the people may not be aware of is that Mr. Skripal had actually sent a letter to President Putin. I don't know exactly when it was. I saw this just recently. Before this whole incident happened, and had apologized to the Russian government for him being a double agent. And he wanted to return home to Russia. You know, so I can't say who really did this chemical attempt against this man's life. And I realize that you can't rule Russia out either. But then again, we also know that the CIA had possession of the Novichok since 1999. There are reports that Britain had access to this material. Many of the former Soviet states had it, including, if I'm not mistaken, I've heard Ukraine's name has been mentioned. But there's a lot of people that have access to this and know the formula. In fact, I was told recently that it was even online, the formula to this Novichok agent that was used on this man and his daughter. And it was very troubling to know that they were targeted to begin with, regardless of what they've done in life. You know, they did what they did for whatever purpose it was. I can't say yay or nay, that's good or bad, but it's troubling indeed. Anyway, I'm Steve Benoon. I just wanted to share some thoughts here with you guys. I'll get more back in the saddle tomorrow for you. Be talking about some interesting things. Sure to be a blessing to you. I've been thinking seriously about releasing a biblical teaching on our Danoon Institute. In fact, actually, the one that I did recently was supposed to have been on Danoon Institute. Ended up loading it on Israeli News Live because I forgot to change the title, but I hope it was a blessing to you guys anyway, about who those real ministers were and how the shepherd, how the hireling is not protecting the sheep. Why? Because he's just a paid minister and doesn't care about the sheep and won't warn them about the wolf, which is none less than Rome itself. And that is becoming a big issue. Going to be going to a lot deeper into that. Pray for me as well about this book I'm writing. Satan certainly tries to put up a lot of obstacles, but we are making headway. And I hope to have this book, I don't know as far as publication, but hopefully by late this summer, it'll be ready and in print for you to be able to read as well. God bless you and shalom.